A fictional organization has history. It has members, resources, rules, and enemies. Powerful factions carry reputations that exist long before your main character ever walks into the story. But many authors will fall into the trap of giving their group a cool name, a fancy symbol, a few powerful members, and stop there. The group looks interesting from the outside, but lacks any real substance underneath it. In this video, we will cover a simple framework for writing factions, hero groups, and organizations in your world. This works whether the group is heroic, villainous, political, religious, military, criminal, academic, magical, or something completely unique to your story. Step 1. Determine the group's function or purpose. Before you decide what the group is called, figure out what it does. A group should exist because it performs a function in the world. It protects something, controls something, studies something, hides something, enforces something, resists something, provides something people cannot easily get on their own. That function is the foundation. If you can't explain what the group does in one sentence, the group is probably not clear enough yet. For example, avoid writing, "This group is mysterious and powerful." That tells us nothing. Write something like this: "This group controls access to the forbidden knowledge of the church." Or, "This group protects people the government abandoned." "This group eliminates threats before the public ever learns they exist." "This group recruits people with dangerous abilities and turns them into useful weapons." Those sentences immediately tell you how the group affects the world. Function also tells you why people care. If the group controls food, money, magic, information, weapons, medicine, territory, law, education, transportation, or public belief, then people have a reason to fear it, use it, join it, or fight it. A group with no function is literally just decoration. It waits around until the plot needs a dramatic entrance. A group with a clear function creates pressure even when no member is on screen. The test is simple. What does your group do that no single person could do alone? What part of the world changes because this group exists? And what becomes harder, more dangerous, or more chaotic if the group were to disappear? Step 2. Give the group a founding reason. The function explains what the group does now. The founding reason explains why it started. Every organization begins as an answer to a problem. Sometimes the problem is practical. Sometimes it's emotional. Sometimes it's ideological. But there should be a moment in the past where enough people believed we need to organize. Maybe an old disaster convinced people that individual action was not enough. Maybe a system failed so badly that people stopped trusting it. Maybe one leader had an idea strong enough to gather followers. Or a group of people who were excluded from normal society and built their own structure. Maybe the world changed and the old institutions couldn't handle the new reality. The founding reason matters because it leaves fingerprints. After betrayal, secrecy becomes easier to justify. During war, discipline becomes survival. A group that began as a shelter may treat loyalty as sacred. A rebellion can keep distrusting authority even after gaining power. And if everything started around one charismatic founder, that founder's beliefs might still shape every rule generations later. This also gives the group emotional weight. Members are not simply wearing the same symbol. They are inheriting a story about why the group had to exist. But here is where it gets interesting. The founding reason and the modern organization don't have to match perfectly. A group that began to protect the weak can become obsessed with control. Or a group that began to expose lies can start hiding its own. A group that began as a necessary defense can become aggressive once it has too much power. That gap between origin and present day gives you conflict. For this step, answer these 3 questions. What problem created this group? What story does the group tell about its own beginning? And is that story still true, or has the group changed? Step 3. Define the promise. Human beings in fiction, just like in real life, are inherently selfish. Everyone has their own motives and goals. People don't join groups without a reason. Even when a group is dangerous, corrupt, or morally wrong, it usually offers something its members desperately want or need. The promise could be safety, belonging, revenge, status, power, truth, money, redemption, or purpose. The promise is the emotional reason someone would give part of their life to the organization. This is especially important for villainous or morally questionable groups. If the only reason people join is because they're evil, the group will look and feel shallow. People need incentives. They need wounds. They need desires the group knows how to exploit. A strong promise sounds like this: you will never be powerless again. The people who hurt you will finally pay. Your ability will stop being a curse. You'll learn the truth everyone else is hiding from you. You will have a family that chooses you. These are just examples. The promise you choose for your fictional group doesn't need to be honest. In fact, some of the best groups are built on promises that are only partly true, like cults, for example. A group can promise freedom while controlling its members. Justice can become cover for cruelty. Family can disappear the moment someone becomes inconvenient. Truth can come with a rule against asking the wrong questions. The promise is what brings people in. The cost is what keeps the story interesting. So define the exchange clearly. What does your group offer that its members deeply want? Who is most vulnerable to that promise? And what does the group take from its members in return? Step 4. Build the group members. A group becomes believable when the reader understands who joins it and why. Try not to make every member the same. Inside one organization, you can have true believers, professionals, opportunists, trapped members, reformers, cowards, loyalists, spies, and people who joined for one reason but stayed for another. This mixture is important. If every member repeats the same ideology, the group feels artificial. Real organizations contain disagreement. Members can share a banner while wanting different things. One member believes in the mission, another wants protection, another wants status, another wants access to resources, another is loyal to a person, not the organization, another is quietly looking for a way out. Now the group has internal life. Membership logic also tells you who the group rejects, who's not allowed in: the poor, the rich, outsiders, people without a certain ability, people with the wrong bloodline, belief, crime, class, education, or history. Exclusion is world building. It tells the audience what the group values and what kind of prejudice or fear it carries. Also think about recruitment. Does the group invite people openly, test them secretly, take them young, force them in, buy their loyalty, rescue them at their lowest point, wait until someone has nowhere else to go? The way a group recruits tells you a lot about its morality. By the end of this step, you should know who joins willingly, who joins because they have no better option, who benefits most from staying, and who would leave the group if leaving didn't cost them anything. Step 5. Decide the structure. Structure is how the group turns ideas into action. Who gives orders? Who carries them out? Who handles money? Who controls information? Who trains new members? Who enforces discipline? And who cleans up failure? The answer doesn't need to be complicated, but it needs to exist. A group with one central leader moves differently from a group controlled by a council. A public organization moves differently from a secret one. A group with local branches moves differently from a small group where everyone knows each other. Each structure creates strengths and weaknesses. A single leader gives the group focus, but also creates dependence. If that leader falls, the group may panic, fracture, or become even more dangerous. A council spreads power, but slows decisions. Every major choice becomes negotiation. A loose network gives people freedom, but makes discipline difficult. One reckless member can damage everyone. Also remember the unglamorous jobs. Every organization needs people who move messages, track supplies, manage records, recruit new members, handle injuries, hide evidence, or maintain safe locations. These roles might not look exciting, but they make the group feel real. They also create plot opportunities. A messenger gets intercepted. A record keeper notices a lie. A supplier changes sides. A low-ranking member knows the one detail everyone important missed. The structural questions are practical. How does this group make decisions? What role keeps it functioning behind the scenes? And which part of the structure would cause the most damage if it failed? Step 6. Create culture and rules. Culture is what the group feels like from the inside. Rules are what members are allowed to do. You need both. Rules answer practical questions. Can members leave? Can they refuse orders? Can they have private lives? Can they question leadership? What happens when they fail a task? And what happens when they betray the group? Culture answers emotional questions. What does the group admire? What does it shame? What stories do older members tell new recruits? What habits make someone look like they belong? What behavior makes everyone go quiet? Symbols, rituals, uniforms, titles, oaths, tests, ranks, and traditions all belong in culture, but they should mean something. A symbol might mark survival. A title might show what someone sacrificed. An initiation might force a recruit to prove loyalty. A uniform might erase identity or display status. A ritual might remember the dead, hide fear, or remind members why they joined. Don't add these details only because they look cool. Use them to show values. This step comes down to reward and punishment. What does this group reward? What does it punish? What does a new member have to change about themselves to truly belong? Step 7. Figure out the group's relationships. No group exists alone. People in the outside world should have opinions about your group. Who fears them? Who funds them? Who uses them? Who hates them? Who secretly depends on them? Who wants to join them? Who wants to destroy them? The same group can look completely different depending on who you ask. One person can see the group as protection. Others see oppression. Some might view them as an opportunity. and some see a threat that needs to be removed before it grows. Also, think about rivals. A rival group shouldn't exist only because the story needs enemies. A strong rivalry comes from overlapping interests. Two groups could want the same resources, the same recruits, territory, public trust, and the same position in the world. Alliances work the same way. Groups don't need to like each other to cooperate. They only need a reason to, like a shared enemy or a temporary goal. These relationships make the world move. Your protagonist can enter one conflict and accidentally disturb 5 others. To map out the relationships, figure out who benefits from your group existing, who suffers because of it, who's pretending to be neutral, and which relationships would explode first under real pressure. Step 8. Give the group internal conflict. The outside world should not be the only source of pressure. Large groups almost always contain smaller disagreements inside them. Old members against new members, idealists against realists, leadership against the people doing the dangerous work, people who still believe in the original mission against people who benefit from what the group has become. This makes the organization feel alive because it can argue with itself. Internal issues also give your characters more interesting choices. They don't have to support or oppose the whole group at once. They can ally with one side, expose another, trust one member, fear another, and slowly realize the organization is not as unified as it looks. This also makes betrayal stronger. A member betraying the leader because they believe the leader betrayed the mission first. Someone from your group might help the protagonist because the protagonist represents what the group was supposed to be. Internal conflict keeps the group from feeling like a single hive mind and more like a living ecosystem. The key question is, what does your group argue about when outsiders aren't listening? Who thinks the group has lost its way? And who benefits from keeping it exactly the way it is? Step 9. Decide what happens if the group wins. This is the final test. A group should be moving towards something, a final goal. It should have a future it's trying to create. If your group succeeds, what changes? Who gains power? Who loses safety? What secret truths will become public knowledge? The same question works in reverse. If the group fails, what happens? Does the world become safer? Or does something worse fill the empty space? Do former members scatter? Do secrets leak? Do enemies celebrate too early? Does the public realize the group was handling a problem nobody else understood? The group should leave a mark either way. Decide what kind of future your group is trying to create. What happens if they succeed? What happens if they fail? And what part of the world will never be the same after? In conclusion, if you want to write factions, groups, and organizations, use this framework. Start with function. Then build the founding reason. Define the promise. Understand the members. Choose the structure. Create culture and rules. Map out the relationships. Add some internal conflict. And decide what victory or destruction would actually change. You don't need dozens of organizations to make your world feel deep. One well-written group can create enough pressure for an entire story arc. Because once a group of people wants something badly enough to build an organization around it, your world starts creating conflict on its own. If this video helped you, hit the like button and leave a comment below. Also, if you want to get started writing your first one-shot manga, head over to mangascript.com to download the one-shot guide. It's a page-by-page breakdown of 3 high-quality manga one-shots, and it makes it 10 times easier to write your own script. And don't forget to join our Discord community. The link is in the description. It's a great place to share your work and connect with fellow creators. Thanks for watching.